Hey everybody, welcome today. Got a special little show for you featuring one of our beloved boot campers, Art. He's here with me. He was willing to share his story. I think it's chock full of lessons about his job search and his interviewing and his multiple offers. And I've been working with him over the past year, and I thought his story is just so rich. I was really excited to bring it to you, and I begged him to show up, and here he is. So I'm going to bring him aboard and let him introduce himself, and we'll go from there. So Art, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. I can't thank you enough. It's been a joy to work with you over the past year or so. Why don't you introduce yourself and kind of tell the people out there, anybody who's watching, a little bit about the beginning of our journey together.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. My name is Art. I've been with Andy for for a number of months, and I've used his techniques for actually on a couple of my searches. One was for the job that I have currently, and the I think the most important one is for the job that I'm gonna get next. So I'm thrilled to be here and tell you a little bit about my story, the things that happened throughout these two searches. Most importantly, throughout the second search, which was very interesting. It was all the help and all the things that I learned throughout this year and months has been tremendous. So I just wanted to share my story with you guys.
Well, I appreciate that, and we know, I think it's been about a year we've been together. You used my job search coaching program to find your job in, I think it was November 2020. Is that right?
That
And
is
then
correct.
you were working over the course of the year. I guess what was the impetus to start to look for a new opportunity? How long ago did you start that?
So the second search, it was exactly 4 months ago, and the beginning of that was just a difference in values that I have with my current company. That it just led me to believe that I needed a new opportunity. I needed a, a new philosophy. So I went back to the books. I went back to all the recordings, and I started looking for a second job, right? For another opportunity. And throughout that, I mean, I'm just gonna make it short for you guys. I ended up with several offers. I declined one of the offers already, and I actually stopped interviewing with one company as I knew it wasn't a philosophical match. So I really used a lot of the techniques, especially that value sheet that you create at the beginning of your search, just to make sure that you're lining up your next opportunity. So it
All
was
right, so wait, so
very
let's
good.
let's talk about that. So now, just for context, can you share with the people what is your what is your main profession? How would you describe yourself? And then we'll talk about that value sheet that you alluded to. So just for context, what do you do?
So I do program management and I do new technology development. I do new product development and some other types of program management. But most importantly, I direct the strategy at high level positions in a company to make sure that things or the value benefits of something gets realized. So that's what I do in general, right?
Okay,
So
so you,
for me, the search is not that simple, right? It's a little
right,
bit
so
takes
you're a
longer.
senior guy, high value position, large
That
portfolio
is correct.
of programs, and you
Correct.
mentioned that you started a search 4 months ago, and that it actually resulted in some offers, and which is great. But I think the more important thing that you said that I really want to share and impress upon with the folks who are watching this is you talked about a value sheet, and what he's referring to is making sure, without to get overly complicated, but you understand your criteria and what's important to you. So and what artists share with me is as you were interviewing, you recognized that while you initially thought some of these companies were interesting, once you went through the process of evaluating them, you recognized that they might not might not be for you. Can you expand upon that? That just how you leaned on that value sheet to make those decisions, because a lot of people, that are out there, they feel like they're under pressure, that they need to take that job. But how did you make that determination, and how did you use your list of criteria that they can create? I give you a fancy sheet, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, for me, it was a little less specific, right? Because as I do new product development, new technology, engineering, I wanted to be in certain companies, in certain fields, um, primarily robotics technology, that sort of thing. So as I was going through some of these interviews, the positions that were posted and for what I interviewing, I started asking quite a bit of questions, and you can get all those questions if you go back to your materials. But I ask many things as philosophies, as very specific to my field, philosophies of development of product, things that I put together before the interview, and that I put in that value sheet that were very important to me. In one of those instances, I saw that the philosophy of development and the actual product wasn't for me. I wasn't interested in developing that type of product. So I was gonna go for final interviews and potentially an offers, but I knew I was not gonna ever gonna join the company. So, I stopped at some point in time. So I realized this is not for me, right? But I knew I had many things in the pipeline, and as you have to have, keep going through putting new companies every day, right? So you can create a very healthy pipeline, so you can start making those decisions.
Wait, so you're hitting on a couple things, and this is actually, that's a sweet segue, because for everybody who you're sharing this with, although he didn't explicitly say this, Art implied it, is he created that first. He created his criteria first, and then he started to surface opportunities, and then was able to make the determination along the way if it didn't align to what his philosophies, his viewpoints, his needs, or whatever it might be. But one thing I'd love to share with the folks is, how were you coming up with these opportunities? Because you just alluded to the fact that, okay, you had some things moving. This is a big mistake that I see people making. I have some interviews that I'm doing now, and they start to slow down their searching, right? They start to, you use the word pipeline, right? They start to let the pipeline relax, but you didn't do that. Can you talk about how you, okay, so that's great that you didn't do that. How did you surface those opportunities? Were you reaching out to employers? Were you applying online? What were you doing?
So several things. One, I was reaching out directly to HR. I reached out to. I used the boss hunting letter. I used LinkedIn to target the specific persons. I use networking heavily, and actually the whole story that I have is throughout networking from a friend. My opportunity came. One of the companies that I might be joining. And then I also was targeted. Once I put my profile out there in LinkedIn, I receive calls from recruiters, right? And that's another opportunity that came through. So I
Okay.
prepare all my materials, and that's how things happen.
Wait, so I love that. So the wonderful message there is networking was key, but if you notice what Art did, he targeted bosses, he targeted people in the HR departments, he looked on LinkedIn, but also an overlooked aspect of your job search, because it's passive, is by cleaning up his LinkedIn profile. And for those of you that follow me for a long time, I throw the statistic out because we capture this year in and year out. But 8% of people who find their new jobs actually do so in an unsolicited fashion because their LinkedIn profile's in order. They were contacted by somebody on LinkedIn, whether a hiring official or a recruiter or an HR person, and Art was getting those as well. So he was able to keep his pipeline going through a balance of outreach and inbound stuff that he made his profile attractive enough. So I think that that's great. So through that, you're surfacing a number of opportunities. So you've got a couple of offers on the line. Can we go into the interview process? Because I think what happened with one of these organizations was pretty special. That this friend of yours who helped you network into the organization, I think pretty aggressively, in fact, and you got into these interviews. I love what transpired because it wasn't just like a straight line to success. Can you share, kind of the journey once you got within this organization and some of the things that you did and learned while you were interviewing?
So yes, that was very interesting because the reason this particular offer happened was I met this person at my current job, and without knowing him, the first month I saw that he was interestingly in trouble because we're in a very, very rapid growth situation right now. I didn't know the guy. I had a couple talks with him, and I joined in November. So in Christmas, I asked him for his address because I was going to send him a Christmas card. I ended up sending this my friend now a basket with wines and everything, just because I felt compelled to send something to him, right? And throughout, we built this friendship in my current company. And at some point in time, when he knew that I was looking for a job, and he also was looking for a job, he found another opportunity. He told me, "Hey, do you want to apply for this company that I worked for before? It's a great company." I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So he moved everything for me to apply in that company. He called the HR people, he called the chief R&D, he called every single person to line up the interviews for me, right? He didn't have to do that, but you never know when your networking is going to take you. And the interviewing was very, very interesting. I went through 14 interviews for a very high VP position. Uh, at the end of the day, what happened is I didn't get that position. I didn't get this VP of program management position, but I got to the end part of the process where there were only two people in this particular company, and everyone said, "Yeah, you interview very good." And I actually uh, I credit my interviewing from quite a bit of my research that I did in all the videos from Andy. I took very, very specific wording that I needed to use in those interviews. But anyway, so I just want to make one last comment. I have an offer from that company, and the reason for is a very high up person in the organization said, "Hey, I really like your interviewing, and I really like what you have in your resume." Uh, he mentioned, "How about we just have a chat afterwards?" And I said, "Yeah, why not?" And throughout my discussions with him, and again I took this piece of advice from one of the recordings from Andy, where he said, "Hey, you can always create your own job." So as we were discussing, I said, he mentioned, "Hey, I like all these things that you brought up. I don't know," and say, "Hey, how about I put a job description for what I want to do in your company?" And he said, "Fantastic." So I put this job description. Within 3 days, he said, "Yeah, this is 95% of what we need." It ended up with a different title, but still a senior director position, which with a tremendous increase in salary and a tremendous increase in earnings per year. I ended up, of course, I wasn't going to interview anymore with them. This is after 12 or 13 interviews. I ended up with an offer from them. So I created my job description. I created a job description, and all these things happened because I saw this person in trouble back last December, and I just sent him a basket with wines and said, "Hey, enjoy, because I know you're in pain." So
So wait. So I
everything
love that.
started
Okay.
there.
So I love this story, and I've had the luxury of hearing it from Art as we're going through this in real time, and I said you got to share this story because think about what he just said. Somebody who he had just started a new job. Somebody was in trouble because this was last year, a year ago, and he did a kind gesture, and kind of you get back what you give off, so to speak, and there was just goodwill and great intent to support your coworker. And then as you develop this friendship, you lean on the network, and that coworker then that former coworker bends over backwards to call into this organization, which helps establish some credibility with Art going into this, and after a dozen interviews, didn't get the job. So now a lot of people, they get really deflated, really frustrated because they invested a lot of time. And I always say there is no such thing as a wasted experience. You learned something, who knows, right? You never know where it goes. And if you always keep the art of the possible in mind, organizations, as a recruiter, as an executive recruiter, some of the best placements that we've ever made for our clients have been with individuals like Art, where they either didn't necessarily match the first description, or we brought them to the organization and said, we need to look at opportunities to get this person in. And while this took a little bit of a different path, it sounds like this executive in the organization was smart enough to know, how can we get this person in our organization? That Jim Collins good to great mentality, let's get the right people in the organization, or get the right people on the bus and they'll figure out where to drive it, kind of thing. So the other things that we want to make sure that you're taking away from that is Art's willingness to continue on the dialogue and proactively say, I'd love to join your organization, and they were receptive to it. And when he talks about a nice increase in salary, I hope you don't mind me. I mean, this is like twice his salary. So we're talking about big jumps here for a position he didn't even get, and then continued on. All right, so here we are today. You've got this offer, and now what?
Now, of course, this is interesting. I have a second offer.
Share this, because this is a big deal.
Yeah, so I have a second offer that is from one of the biggest tech companies in the world, right, that everyone wants to get in. This particular lead came from improving my profile in LinkedIn. They contacted me, and then I went through, again, a huge loop of interviews and quite a bit of things. So I'm negotiating a second offer currently. Unfortunately, I already accepted this, the first offer. I didn't want to lose that, but this particular company, or this tech company, looks very interesting. However, I'm in the middle of all these negotiations, and I'm just waiting to see what happens this week. Right, it's one of those things. I wish I wish everything was clear cut in a job search, but it's not. You're gonna have all sorts of things happening in your job search. That timing, I can tell you that I'm a program manager. It's very difficult to forecast the future, so it's actually impossible.
It is, and you know what? I want to say this to everybody, because, okay, so Art and I are going back and forth through his journey, and he says, hey, I've got this offer, I've got this other one where this tech giant may or may not move at the speed I'd love, and I can't get everything schedule-wise to line up. And I know I get this question a lot, Andy, should I take the offer and I'll feel miserable if I have to renege on it? And there are many things that you can do to communicate effectively along the way, but you cannot control the timing of these organizations. And what I always say to my boot campers like Art and anybody in the community is, you've got to protect yourself. You've got to accept that offer. If you cannot get these things to line up, you do not want to lose something that you actually would really enjoy. And if something happens where another organization comes along before you start that job or very shortly thereafter, I would rather you spend the time, think it through. If you really want the other job, then let the current employer or the one you accepted the offer go, because why punish yourself for years or look over your shoulder? I would rather you have some very short-term pain and feel badly for something you could not control versus years of you looking over your shoulder and wondering what if. So I guess this is really, this is where we leave it. So Art has a success story one way or the other. We're right in the middle of this, and he's negotiating with the tech giant as well. We don't know how that turns out. Maybe by the time you're watching this video, we'll know all that. But I wanted to make sure that Art and I had a chance to spend some time together before he started his new job next week. And either which way, I wish him luck. Art, is there is there anything that you want to share with the people, here before we sign off? Anything that you want to share with them about you, what's changed for you, or what you learned, or a couple of really big lessons, or anything that you want to say to cheer them on in their journey?
Sure. I mean, you have to take this as a process, right? You're gonna get out what you put in, right? So you need to make sure that your pipeline of a company that is going in is healthy. Even if you get rejected, it doesn't really matter, right? As long as you get that pipeline going. And I guess the biggest lesson for me going through this process is polish your interviewing skills. Uh, Read, watch the videos, and practice, practice, and practice because you might not be the right candidate in terms of everything, getting check marks on everything. But if you can portray what you can do for a company during your interview, that is going to give you an edge over everyone. And I actually, from many of the videos, I took a little phrases, little things that I pop in my interviews. And I can tell you, everyone was delighted with my interviewing. And it was just because I took the time and the advice and little things here and there to improve my interviewing, and that's I think what gave me the offers, right, and improve the way I do a job search. So it's probably the best the best advice that I can give.
I love that. And just to kind of round this out and wrap this up, and he said some really great things there. Planting the network seeds, right, early on with the friend. Balls in the air, I call them bidas. But what he stressed this about making sure your pipeline is built and remains healthy, even though you might start getting opportunities. If something doesn't work out, it's really the blow to you is not going to feel nearly as bad if you put all your eggs in that basket. If you've got 4, 5, 6 things going at once, if one of them falls off, that's okay, right? So you just keep moving with the others. Maybe that wasn't meant to be. And then the other thing that he said was about making sure that your interviewing skills are up to snuff. Sometimes it's just a few little things that will unlock it, but you need to be practicing this stuff. And even if the situation, the outcome that Art is now in the middle of, we know this is a success story, it's just a matter of which one of these organizations, this fortunate organizations he's going to choose, is timing isn't always perfect. So don't beat yourself up over that. Don't sweat it, and just hang in there and keep going. And if you need the help, we're always here for you. And Art, I want to thank you again for sharing your story. It's really, I mean, you're such a great guy, and I've really enjoyed working with you, and I continue to look forward to working with you because Art's also in my leadership program for life. So I know we're going to be hooked together at the hip for a long time. I can't thank you enough, buddy. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
And
Thank
I
you.
just,
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And I hope all of you who are watching this really enjoyed it. And thanks again. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.